there, it's Natasha, and thank you so much for joining me today. Today I am doing a little bit different size card. This is a 5 inches by 6.5 inch card, and no real reason for this card. I knew I needed it a little bit bigger because I knew lots of people would be writing on the inside, and I also wanted to work with a black background. It is not too often that I start off with a black piece of paper for a background, so this was kind of a good leaping off point for me. So anyway, I am going to cut this down so that it is a 1/4 inch smaller. You can see it will just create a really nice small border around the outside there, and that is perfect for what I want at the moment. Now we are going to go on to the next part of creating the focal point, which is going to be a big bunch of flowers. And honestly, for this, you do not need a whole lot of fancy dyes. I have found a couple of different dyes here, flower dyes, and some of these are so old. In fact, the kind of daisy looking ones, I've used these in many cards, and I think these might have been some of the first dyes that I ever bought. So I use them over and over again. Any flowers that you have in your stash will work for this, and I die cut them out of some plain white cardstock. Then I have some ripe persimmon and spiced marmalade. Again, it doesn't really matter which colours you use, it doesn't really matter which inks you use, or you could die cut these out of some coloured cardstock. I'm choosing 2 colours just so that they aren't quite so flat, so I kind of do a base layer of the spiced marmalade in this version here, and then the ripe persimmon is going to go around the outside just to give them a little bit more lift and a little bit more bold colour on the outside. But if you start off with coloured cardstock, then you could just use 1 colour of ink, or if you don't have lots of colours, then I really do advise that a good white ink pad goes a long way when you are adding some dimension to coloured cardstock and things. So just use what you have in your stash, and in this case I want these bunch of flowers to be really bright. So I'm going for a full-on bright effect, especially given that I am going to have a black background. So really dark background, and I really want these flowers to pop. So that is the main, it's not meant to look realistic or anything like that, just really nice and bright. Then I have some Mermaid Lagoon and Peacock feathers. Now I end up here, and I will end up using these in the end, but when I put down, I think I put down the peacock feathers first, and when I put it on, I know straight away that it's not the right colour for what I was wanting. But I end up finishing off that little flower, and I die cut lots of them. I just die cut lots and lots, and then that way I know that I can, mess up a couple or use them later, or I know my kids will always love playing with them, any leftover scraps that I have. So this time I'm going to change it up to the Mermaid Lagoon and Broken China, which is just a little bit of a lighter blue. And then again, I don't end up liking this here, and I actually end up using some Tumbled glass, which is a really light blue in the Oxide collection, and that ends up being the light blue. And then I stick with the Mermaid Lagoon. So here's the Tumbled glass. So just have a play around. Just because you get one wrong, it doesn't mean it's going to be wrong. It just means that you kind of have a bit of a play. And honestly, I was having a really big play today. It was really enjoyable. I kind of didn't have a plan at all. I didn't know what was going to happen. So I just really enjoyed playing, and I just knew I wanted a bright, lots of gorgeous bright flowers. This is going to be a birthday card, so if you wanted to tone it down a little bit, perhaps you could make it into a sympathy card or a get well card or something like that. But I don't know, maybe you want bright flowers for that as well. So just whatever works for you, but this was going to be a happy birthday card, and I was making this for a friend of mine to give to her colleague. So their workplace is all going to sign the inside and things, so that's why I needed to make it a little bit of a bigger card. The purples are Seedless Preserves and Wilted Violet, and again, just use whatever inks or whatever mediums that you have. I mean, you could colour these with acrylic paints, you could colour these with re-inkers, you could colour these with glitter pastes, you could colour these with anything. It doesn't matter what products you have, or if you want to use some wax crayons or children's crayons, use whatever you have in your stash. Now when I'm moving on to the leaves here, I am using some peeled paint and cracked pistachio. I'm kind of just, as I said, I wanted it to be really nice and bright, so I'm adding a couple of different colours on each of the leaves. And then for the stems of these, I just go ahead and I just get some scrap pieces of paper and then I add colour. I don't necessarily want it to be even or smooth, because when I end up cutting these up, nobody's going to know anyway, and lots of this ends up kind of being covered, but I want them there, so I am just going to add a couple of different colours. And again, it doesn't have to be neat or perfect at all. I'm just getting the colour down. Then once we've got all our flowers sorted, I'm going to add a couple of details with a white pen. This is not exactly necessary at all. If you were brave, you could do it with a black pen as well. I just like the really simple highlights that it gives, and it's particularly on the leaves there, it gives them some really nice definition where their veins and things are going to be. And the flowers, it just gives a little bit, depending on the colours that you have used and how much the ink is going to show up. But you can see here with the leaves, I was using my white gel pen a little bit too soon. The Oxide inks here were still a little bit wet, so I had to really encourage my gel pen, but we got there in the end, and as I said, it adds some nice details, some nice little veins into those leaves. But again, if you want to skip this step, then you can do that too, or if you have a stamp that you want to put over top, then that would work as well. Then I am going to put these little flowers together. So I die cut these knowing that I would kind of layer them up and give this card a little bit of dimension. I know that this is going to be hand delivered to somebody, so I wasn't too worried about getting it squished in an envelope or anything. But even if it did go into an envelope, it's okay that it squishes down a little bit. I am going to give them a little bit of dimension with my fingers, and the way that they will get kind of popped together, they'll kind of stay up and be a little bit dimensional anyway. So just crinkle them any which way you want with your hands. If you want to get really good at it and professional, then you could use a little ball stylus thing and make them really nice. But I was just quickly doing it with my hands. It works just as well. Now coming back to the black background that I was going to use, I want something to be happening on it because otherwise it's a little too stark and plain for what I kind of had thought I wanted to have going on. So I have a scrap piece of white paper here, and I am cutting this into different sized strips, so some really thin, some medium, some a little bit larger. I'm not measuring, I am trying to make sure they are straight, and that is all I am looking at. I'm not bothered about getting two widths the same or anything different. I'm just digging into my little scrap pile here and then just making sure I have what I think will be enough to cover the front panel. So some thick and some thin. Then I thought I was going to use my tea ruler here because I thought it would be helpful. It is not helpful. I am adding a little line of liquid glue. The liquid glue is the Ranger Multi-Medium in the matte finish, and that means that if any squirts out the side or I get a little bit in the wrong place, it won't be shiny and it will dry completely clear with no indication that there was ever glue there. So I kind of thought I would put a little strip along here and then I'd be able to kind of line it up, but honestly it ended up being far more hassle than it was worth, and I just took it off in frustration, and then I could kind of eyeball them just as well as I wanted to. So even for these tiny little skinny ones, I just use a little bit of liquid glue. Sometimes I run my finger along the line afterwards just to take away a little bit of that excess glue and then pop it down. As I said, I'm not worried because with this glue it dries completely matte and I don't have to worry about it, so it can I can kind of shift it around a little bit and I know that it will end up fine. Again, there is no rhyme or reason to how I'm putting these down. I just want there to be different gaps of the white and the black. I don't want anything to look the same at all. I want it to look pretty random, I guess. So this was a really nice, easy way to do a background and kind of just using scraps and things. It didn't mean that I had to have any specific technique, and it worked out really well just to kind of eyeball the scraps. But if you can manage to use the ruler, then you are more coordinated than I am. So I'm going to put a last little one up the top there, and then all I have to do is turn this over and I'm going to snip off all those excess little pieces. And this I really like, even though this was very simple, the background is very simple, I really like this effect. The black and white are very striking and stunning, so I really thought that this set the card off really nicely. Then once I have this part done, it's kind of time to start putting the card together. Now there are, as usual, a few tips and tricks that I am going to do to really pull this card together and pull all of the elements together. There are some things that I want to hide, and there are some things that I want to accentuate. So I'm just going to pop all these little flowers down. I am going to rearrange these, and I kept in all of this bit so that you could see my process of swapping flowers in and out and seeing what I thought worked. I kind of wish that I had another smaller blue flower there, but honestly I like the look of how this is, and sometimes if I overthink things, that's when it gets difficult. So it's easier to just go ahead and glue these down once I think I have pretty much a good little bouquet here. I am popping them all in kind of nice and tight, and then again I'm using that liquid glue, and then that way I'm able to rearrange these and move them around a little bit. I am working not quickly, but I'm going to keep going here. I don't want to step away because I want to be able to adjust things. That is one of the best parts about using liquid glue, is that I have the ability to wiggle things around and maneuver things where I want them. So I'm going to keep going. All I've done is just using my little pair of fussy cutting scissors. So I didn't even use my really long bladed scissors to get nice straight lines. I just want any little pieces of thin green card here that we colored earlier, and I have cut them all up, and these are going to be kind of the stems or the stalks or of the flowers. And again, we are going to kind of do lots of things to these so that it doesn't look quite so kind of plain and simple. I really like how it's looking, but again, as I said, there's lots of little tips and tricks that we are able to do to kind of bring these flowers to life. So I am putting in pretty much a stem for every single flower, and that way that will also give us a really nice little bunch of them as well, and kind of just making them all come to a point down the bottom. Then we are going to start adding in some leaves and things, and this little bouquet will come to life. I do apologize that today's video is a little bit longer. I tried shortening it a little bit more, and it just ended up feeling like I was cutting out too much of the detail. So I apologize that this one's a little bit longer to watch. I am popping in some of the leaves, cutting off some of the little bits so I can tuck them behind the flowers. And then once I have got these first few, I'm leaving a couple more leaves because I want to use those later on. Now I have got a piece of burlap string here, or ribbon or twine, whatever you want to call it, and if you have some kind of normal twine this would work well, but what I do, because this serves a couple of purposes, is I am just going to cut off one edge there, and then all of these little strings of twine come free. So this is just a little hack so that I don't have to have lots of different things in my drawer. And I'm going to use about, I think I ended up using about 4 or 5 little pieces here all together to create a really nice little bow, a twine bow that is going to go on the front. And as I said, this is just going to be another kind of, not distraction, but another little added detail to those stems down the bottom. I'm using some liquid glue, and then I'm going to hold that down and make sure that it's nice and dry. And then all I'm going to do with those leftover couple of leaves is kind of pop those up on top, and this will really fill out our bouquet. It kind of makes it look a little bit less empty down there where all of the stems are. So those ones are kind of strategically placed there on top to make it look a little bit more like a bunch. Then I'm going to use some Nouveau drops. I am using just colours that roughly coordinate or a similar colour, but they're still going to kind of shine through and become the centre to all the flowers. Some of them I do little dots, some of them I do bigger dots. You could use enamel dots, you could use buttons, you could use gems, you could use beads. Whatever you have would work really well in the centre here. Then I'm going to leave those to dry so that I do not ruin them. But first of all, I'm going to pop a couple of little white dots using the white Nouveau drops here, there and everywhere around the card. Again, these are just these gorgeous little details that I really enjoy, but you can stop anywhere. You can absolutely stop anywhere. Now I just need to pop a little sentiment on here, and I didn't want it to be a big overwhelming one. This is a happy birthday card, and I do love this sentiment here. This is called Word Fragments. I've used this on heaps and heaps of cards. You guys have seen this one lots of times before, but I just like that it has kind of a few different stamps than what I usually see. I really like the Wonderful News one, just kind of a little bit different, and it has all those normal ones that we really love seeing and really love using, but I've appreciated that some of them are a little bit different to what you usually get in a sentiment stamp set. Now I had a little hair on one of the letters of my stamp there, so that's why I stamped it out 3 times, but I finally got it right. So the one on the right hand side is the one that I am going to cut out. I'm just using some long bladed scissors. These happen to be the Tim Holtz long bladed ones, but if you want to use a trimmer, then that works just as well. Then on the back here, I'm going to use my little trick of pulling back all 4 corners, and then I have a couple of extra little pieces of tape in the middle. So I pull back all 4 corners and then pull the tape right off those center pieces. And this way, I just kind of adjust it around my card base until I have it exactly in the right spot. I don't touch the middle until I am completely happy with where I have everything lined up. Once I've got it all lined up, you'll see me press in the middle with my thumb and then pull out each one of those tabs, and everything is lined up perfectly on my card base. Just to finish it off, once my sentiment is popped up on a little couple of foam squares, I'm just going to kind of nestle it in down the side there, and I'm really happy with how this card came out. It was really fun to create. I didn't need a whole lot of fancy dies and lots of crazy things. I used some really old flower dies that I had in my stash, and everything else I could create myself. So I hope you enjoyed this one. I really look forward to seeing you in the next video. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. And I'll see you in the next video. Thanks, bye!